Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good day wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the next episode of No Dice, No Glory. Sponsored by our jobs that actually pay us money, we're coming to you not at all live from an abandoned arms factory deep under a mountain in West Virginia. We are proud to proffer to you the finest in wargaming coverage. Without any further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Today, we have some special guests, and we're going to be looking and spoiling for you the new book, Avanti. So everybody grab your plate of spaghetti, sit down, and we're ready to talk. We have with us today our Canadian contingent. I think in our first episode we said we love these guys, and we really do. So I'm going to introduce the team today, your Avanti team from No Dice, No Glory. First of all, you will know him as Matt Varnish, but his real name is Dennis Campbell. Say hi, Dennis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
And with him is Matt Mackenzie.
Hi, how are you?
There you go. He's excited. And, of course, Iron Tom Burgess.
Yeah, Scouts out.
Scouts out. And everybody knows myself, Mitch Reed, the Meta. So, look, this book, it is the fourth one to come out for Mid-War. And we've gotten a copy about 2 weeks ago, and we were so excited about it. I believe Matt Varnish painted up a whole army, and we've played it a few times. Well, these guys have played it a few guys. So, let's just get right to the big thing. Tell us about the special rules in this game.
Well, to start, we've got, in Avanti Savoia, we've got the 8 million bayonet. So if you guys ever played with Italians or against Italians, you'll recall rolling dice and seeing what the stats and ratings of your team or your units are. Well, now each unit card has two columns. There's regular and then there's improved, and then you roll the 8 million bayonet dice, and and if you get the symbol, your unit is improved. So it can't get worse, and it's like rolling a D6 and getting a 5+. So that's pretty good in that. Already, all of your guys are being hit on a 4+.
Wow, that is pretty good.
So yeah, in the past, you could have some reluctant conscripts, especially in early war. But I mean, now the Americans are getting hit way worse than Italians, which is kind of crazy. We've also got Avanti, that it increases the follow me ability to virtually make it almost guaranteed that you're going to be advancing your guys forward. And the tanks especially, I mean, they can do it on a 2+. So that is certainly excellent for advancing your infantry, advancing your infantry guns, as we'll talk about later. And next we've got Determined, which is a +1 to rallying and remount rolls. Now that's pretty good. But I think we're going to talk a little bit later how the tanks get an extra one. So that's going to make M14s remount on a 2+, which is scary indeed.
Wow, the Italians seem really buffed, man. I tell you, I may be starting to play them. Now, I know assault engineers are throwing in some really interesting wrinkles for the first time in Mid-War. Matty, what do you know about those lovely engineers?
Well, the engineers themselves are interesting. It's nice to see engineers because we haven't seen too many of them in the other lists. The makeup and the points, I don't know that they're worth it for me. They've got them broken down into two. Basically, you can spend 15 points, and that'll get you 5 MG rifle teams, 2 mortar teams, 2 flamethrower teams, which we'll talk about later on. Or you can spend 8 points, which is almost half that, and you can go with 3 of the MG rifle teams, 1 set of mortars, and 1 flamethrower instead.
It's the first time we've
again, like Dennis mentioned, you've got the different ratings available. Dennis, I just had a quick question on that too. Did you find when you set up your armies, did the beginning of the game go a lot faster because you didn't have to roll multiple times for different things and consult the chart? Was it better just to roll a symbol and then?
Yeah, what I ended up doing, and I know we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but what I ended up doing is I had dice. I custom made my own dice that had all the different ratings. And so what I did is I just rolled a d6 as I deployed, and any 5+ that I got, I just put the Italian symbol near my unit leader. And that way I knew one of those things. I was like, hey, this is the infantry platoon that follows me on a 2+. Heck yes. Those are the guys going, dash, follow me, and now I'm in their grill. You know what I mean? But yeah, I found it a lot easier than the old finding the appropriate, confident veteran shit in my dice tray and trying to put it, it's just they're either elite or they're not.
And the flamethrowers, I believe, are the first time in version 4, correct?
Yeah. So
we haven't seen them yet.
Yeah. So they infantry and gun teams, they have to re-roll their saves, and anybody hit by them are pinned. They're no longer one shot, but they can assault.
Cool. That's a big difference. So let's get to the lovely Italian armor, which we've either been frustrated or enjoyed over the years. Tom?
Yeah. Well, the Italian tanks have one old rule, protecting ammo. That's pretty straightforward. It's +1 remount. But the interesting thing, when that combines with determined, which all the Italians also have, it basically means your standard rank and file M14 41s and your Semaventes, they remount on a 2+.
Wow.
I mean, and you think in terms of mid-war and firepower and how many weapon systems out there have a 4+ firepower, those guys are getting back up. So you need to put these Italian tanks down. You can't count on them staying unveiled. So they will come back in. So that's not a new rule, but combined with that new rule of determined, it really is pretty potent for the Italian tanks. The other one is focused, and this is something I really like about version 4. As Dennis mentioned earlier, essentially when it comes to be hit, the Italians are careful, quote unquote careful. So they only hit normally on a 4+, effectively what you and I would know as veterans. But they're not veterans. When it comes to focus, their skill when it comes to executing their tactics orders is very low. It's as bad as some of the British tanks. So they're doing their tactics, their blitz moves and their dig-ins, or wouldn't be dig-ins for tanks, but their tactics are only like a 5+, because the reason is because the commander being overworked in the turret and being very narrowly engaged on one thing or the other. So it's kind of interesting to me how they can make them veteran practically for being hit, but when it comes to executing orders, other than the Avanti, which already has the Avanti, the follow me has the Avanti bonus, it makes it hard for them to do things like a blitz or shoot and scoot, or in crosshair is I guess a bit difficult too. So that's very interesting to me.
The Italians have gotten really good in version 4. I may have to crack open the wallet. Well, I mean, let's talk about what really everybody wants to know about the lists. And, of course, you guys can't see it out there, but, with the version 4 force, you have tank formations, weapons formations, infantry formations, and everybody loves tanks. So, Tom, please continue on about some of those great Italian tank formations, which are great now.
Sure, Mitch. Yeah. So they're very similar to the cards that we saw released for, I think it was an Australian event or New Zealand event. They had the pre-release of the M1441. The stats are basically the same. The tank company itself, a headquarters tank for 2 points, and then you have 3 platoons as part of the formation. The platoons can be either M1441s or Semavente batteries. So basically you can either run all M1441s or all Semaventes, or a mix, two of one and 3 of the other. So that's new. We were never able to run Semavente formations in any previous version of Flames of War. The headquarters tank is always going to be an M1441, so that's set. But then those 3 platoons, they're basically as you choose. You can take all 3 of one, or all 3 of the other, or 2 and 1, as you see fit. So the tank platoons themselves, they're the same cost as before and the same stats, with the exception of the roll-up for the elite status. And they basically come in at 6 points for 3 tanks. So that's only two points a tank. 9 points for 4 and 12 points for 5. So very economical. Now, the stats on the tanks aren't particularly great. They're 3-2-1 armor. Their move is 10, pretty much straightforward there. And their gun is only a 47mm gun with the AT6 firepower 4+, with the benefit of the heat round, which doesn't cause the +1 increase for the armor at long range. So that's a nice little thing. And then they've got a buttload of machine guns. 6 machine guns per tank. So they're great for running down infantry, huge capacity there, and they're really good, and we'll talk more about this later on, for destroying my Crusaders. they have quite the ability to do that. So I was really impressed with what you can do. The problem is going to be when they come across the heavier U.S. tanks and the heavier German Panzers with the armor 5, armor 6. Then their gun is going to be inadequate. But at least for the other light tanks, they're great. Now, the thing that really impressed me about the Semaventes, I'm so excited about these. Honestly, this is the only Italian unit I've ever used, because normally when I'm playing in the North Africa campaigns, I'm running Semaventes as a support option for my Germans. So you can still do that. The Semaventes, they're a bit different than previous versions. Their armor is 421. They have the standard tank movement going on. And the most important thing is, in all previous versions of Flames of War, the Semaventes were direct fire only. Now they're direct fire and indirect as well. So they can bombard, which is fantastic. They've got a gun that has 20-inch range, so it lost a little bit on the range from previous versions, but in the anti-tank value went down a little bit on previous versions. Now anti-tank 8 versus 9. Firepower still good with the 3+, still has heat, but that ability to bombard is fantastic. And so as a German player, a DAC player, I can see me taking a support option from the Italians now of a Semavente platoon and using it where I would have used my Panzer IVs as a template kind of weapon delivery system and secondary role as a tank. This does the same thing, but much, much cheaper than the Panzer IV. So the Semavente, they come in at about 4 points a pop, so they're basically twice as expensive as the M1441s, and they go 4 points each, and you can take them in intervals of 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So they can get pretty large in platoon size, in a platoon of 6 of these things. I really like this. So a platoon of 6 Semaventes is 24 points. So now you're repeating hits, misses, re-rolling misses and bombardments. You got a lot more guns for direct fire with good firepower bonuses. So you get a lot of mileage out of these things. And at 24 points, that's like 3 Panzer IVs. So twice the number of tanks with virtually the same capacity as far as offensive firepower.
And I think the points for flexibility too is good to have. You're more to them than you are your Panzer IVs.
These things come fearless.
Yeah.
They're
artillery. Yeah. Artillery was their elite.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Now one of the negatives I have to point out, though, is that the Semavente batteries are just all Semaventes. So your Commando Caros, which was your command vehicle from your earlier versions, that's not present. It's nowhere in the book. So you can expect the feedback already. Oh, I can't use my Commando Caros. But like in my case,
as my formation HQ for the one that has my Semaventes. That's what I put mine as.
Well, I've only got 4 Semaventes because I had the platoon of 4 with the 1 Commando Caro. So I'm like, well, guess what? The Commando Caro is just going to be used like a normal Semavente now to make the 5th one. So,
right.
Sure. So that model will still get use. And then it'll be very easy to tell which one's my command vehicle. So definitely very excited about the Italian armor forces. I probably, due to time, I would love to jump in the Italians, but I'm working on my 8th Army stuff, and I've already got my DAC stuff going. So I'm going to have to take an appetite suppressant on these guys, but I'm really excited to use these Semaventes in particular with my DAC forces as an allied part. And I'm going to be playing these a lot because my number one opponent locally, Ed Hall, Battle Buddy Ed, he's got a huge Italian army, so I'll be facing this stuff a lot.
Yeah, this is definitely a buff. Only 2 tanks, but I've never really played Italians too much before. But this seems pretty good. Let's talk about those the weapons. Let's talk about the infantry, the Bersaglieri. I know I'm saying it wrong. Bersaglieri. Let's talk about the weapons company. Kind of some interesting things with these guys.
Sure. So the weapons company is something that's pretty new in terms of the other version 4 lists. So the weapons company is, if you guys have played the older Italians, you could have just infantry in big, huge units, or you could have the tiny little units, but they had the integral weapon systems. So the Bersaglieri Weapons Company it went under this doctrine called the few men, many weapons doctrine. So you get a Bersaglieri Weapons Company HQ. It's 2 guys with Carcano rifle teams. Again, they're hit on a they have a 3+ infantry save. They're careful. So again, they're be hit on a 4+, and you can. Their Avanti and Rally are 3+ normally, but if you get the elite roll on the 8 million bayonets, they go to 2+ for the follow me. They're skilled, they're trained, but again, if you get the elite, they go to 3+. One thing to note. They are 1 point for the two teams, unlike the British ones, which is 2 points for two teams, I believe. And what's really nice about these guys, and it just kind of dawned on me as to the good use of these guys, the 2IC model, that's the guy that spots for your Semaventes. Because, or your artillery. So to me, that's their biggest use. Why? Because the Carcano rifle teams in Flames of War is 16 inches, one shot moving or halted, but is slow firing, which I think is kind of weird given that Lee Harvey Oswald got off quite a lot of shots using the same weapon, in Dallas, but we won't go there.
The guy in the grassy knoll got off more shots.
Yeah, exactly. So he had a VAR. So that's the HQ. The compulsory choices are 1 weapons platoon and 1 47 millimeter anti-tank gun platoon. So I'll go through the weapons platoon first. It's a tiny unit of infantry, really. So you can pay 5 points. You get 2 MG teams, 1 HMG team. So that's the Breda Model 37. And you get 1 Solothurn 20 millimeter anti-tank rifle. So that's 4 teams for 5 points. You have the option of buffing it to 3 MG teams and the same amount of weapons for 6 points. But they're all infantry. So I'll go through the stats super quickly. The Brady HMG is just like every other HMG, range 24, halted ROF of 6, movement ROF of 2, anti-tank 2, firepower 6+. So, it's an HMG. Everybody knows them by now. The 20 millimeter anti-tank Solothurn gun is it's kind of in between the Boys anti-tank rifle and the 2.8 centimeter German PBZ-41. So this its stats are range 20, halter rate of fire 2, or moving rate of fire 1. Has an anti-tank of 5, so it's not as bad as a Boys, but it's not as awesome as PBZ-41. Firepower 5+. Both the HMG and the Solothurn are assault 5+, so you can assault with them because they're infantry teams, not gun teams. Oh, sorry, you can't assault with them. They hit on a 5+, but they're heavy weapons. Now, for each of these weapons platoons, you have the option for 2 points to add in the 47 millimeter Elephantino. So this thing has a range of 24 inches. Again, halted ROF of 2, moving ROF of 1, anti-tank 6. So it's the same gun, basically, that's in the M14, but as an infantry stand. So it's anti-tank 6, firepower 4+, has heat rounds, and those can be added in integrally to the weapons platoons. So you can have up to 3 weapons platoons in the formation. And then now let's go talk about, again, the 47 millimeter anti-tank gun as a unit. You can take 2 for 4 points, 3 for 6 points, 4 for 8 points. I would go with 4 points or none. Again, they're infantry teams, same stats. They can be same stats as the previous infantry. They can be improved by rolling the 8 million bayonets dice. But the thing to note is that because they're infantry teams and not gun teams, they have a tactical move of 8. They can be given move orders. So which is great. You can move them 8 and still shoot. Rate of fire 1, right? You can make they automatically cross obstacles. It's not like a gun. They have 360-degree field of view. They fire from anywhere on the base as an infantry team. So you don't have to, center the base or anything you don't have to take line of sight from the base. And if they're stationary, teams behind them can shoot over them.
And they're on a medium base, correct?
And they're on a medium base. So they are not, so they can go into buildings. So you can, and so you can Avanti, if you get the improved stats on these guys follow me on a 2+. So you can dash them and then follow me into a building, and then you're sitting 16 inches deep. Further, if you're able to spearhead them with something, and so now you've got all these guns that have 360-degree rate of field of view. Anti-tank 6 isn't going to hit anything in the front, but man, oh man, they're not going to put their Panzer IIIs. They're not going to go past them.
Yeah.
tanks can't go into buildings anymore, so they can't assault them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's perfectly fine for killing British tanks for the Crusaders and Honeys.
Yeah,
They're tailor-made for those.
You know, and I didn't realize reading this that their movement is 8 inches because I played with the German 50 millimeter guns that you have to take with the DAC, and you can move them 4. This is not bad. I think this is, and if you look, this whole little outfit, you could take 5 of these guys for very little points. I don't know.
Yeah, it's 4 for 8 points.
Yeah, and then
there is one big drawback, and that is because they're infantry teams, and this is why I said take a unit of 4 or make them integral to your weapons platoons, because as infantry in version 4, you're still in good spirits if you have 2 guns, but you're only in good spirits if you have 3 infantry stands. So with this, if you take the 2 or the 3-man units, you're very susceptible to the first mortar hit, causing these guys to run.
Yeah.
Well, I would take these in units of 4, but the thing is, this formation can take more than 1 unit of them. You can take 2 units of them, and they're compulsory. So think of these as like a poor man's 6-pounder, but a 6-pounder, it's only got a front field of fire, not 360 degrees. There's a whole bunch of advantages to being an infantry team.
Yeah, this really is. I think this is the first time we've seen a gun like this, because if you look at the British 6-pounder, if you look at the German 50 millimeter gun and the American guns, they're all like what we call standard gun teams, front firing. These guys are mobile, and they can hit. And if you get like that good 2-up follow me, I don't want to play against these guys.
And they can get into buildings, and other gun teams, they can deploy in buildings, but they can't ever leave them. You know what I mean? These guys have the mobility, which is nuts. To me, they're one of the standout units in the list. Standout. I have 4 painted.
You really have to think of them as big anti-tank rifles. Very big, very powerful anti-tank rifles. That's kind of what they are.
Wow. Yeah. I'm picking up a box of these. Well, let's go to their cousins, man. The guys from the 5th Regimento Bersaglieri. Which also, you can put a lot of, I'm not going to spoil it, Matty, but a lot of 47 millimeter guns are going to be on these Italian tables.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're going to be a pretty popular option. Looking at some of the support options, it's going to be interesting to see how many people employ them.
So who wants to talk about that rifle company? I mean,
I can. I just dealt with the previous weapons company. I may as well.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So these guys, same HQ as the previous as the weapons company, right? So they are 2 teams that are 1 point for the 2 teams, which is again glorious. One guy is obviously going to be your spotter. Now you can take units of infantry. They don't have an integral weapons to them, which is unfortunate, but they have the stuff that, you can take the 47 millimeter guns that we just discussed. You can take 2 units of those. That's integral support. But let's just talk about the 2 compulsory rifle platoons. So those can be 5-man or 9-man. It's basically 4 rifle stands and 1 platoon leader, or 9, and they're 1 point each. So the 5-man unit is 5 points. The 9-man unit is 9 points. I think that's a little overcosted, but you get a lot of guys. And these guys, again, the Avanti on a 3+, their skills on a 4+, but if you get improved, it's they're blitzing on 3+, they're following on 2+. What's really neat about these guys, or this, and again, you could take 3 of these rifle platoons. But what's neat is this is where you're getting your other support options. So we've already talked about the 47 millimeter anti-tank gun, of which you can get 2 units of those. But you can also get a unit of 3 Breda HMGs. So the Modelo 337, I've already talked about its stats. But as this small unit, it's 3 points for 3 HMG teams. I think this is super good value. And that's a lot of shots at 24 inches.
Yeah.
And it's a nice platoon that you can place at the beginning, forcing, if your opponent's, especially as like an Africa Corps player, he's only got like 4 platoons, so you're going to know where all his tanks are before you deploy your heavy hitters. So it's a nice, cheap little platoon. let's talk about the direct opposite of that, and that is the Brixia Assault Mortar team. So you get, for 5 points, you get 3 large bases with a bunch of the little breech-loading Brixias. Unfortunately, I think they're way overcosted. I'll just go through the stats real quick. The Assault Mortar team has range 16. I mean, it's an infantry team, just so let's get that off the bat. So just like everything else, they can be given move orders and all that. But their stats, range 16, halted rate of fire 6, moving rate of fire 3, anti-tank 1, firepower 5+. It's got overhead fire and direct fire smoke. So for whatever reason, so it's a light mortar, like the British and the Germans have, but it fires like an MG.
Yeah.
Now,
like putting these guys behind those 9 stands, I mean, that's pretty good. I kind of wish their firepower was a little bit better, but
that's the thing. If the firepower was 4+ or the points was a little lower, I could see these guys being used more often. I mean, when the Russians come out eventually with Eastern Front, yeah, you might need these guys. But for right now, I mean, 5 points, man, that's 2 biplanes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's worth 5 points. So that's 2 of the 3 support options that the Bersaglieri have. The last one, and I've used these, is the 81 millimeter Mortar Platoon. So you get 2 tubes for 3 points or 3 tubes for 5. It sounds a little expensive, but then you look at the range, 48-inch range.
Wow.
It can reach out and touch. And again, you could pop these guys behind a building. There's no minimum range behind buildings for mortars anymore, guys. You just pop it behind a building.
And I think
you can put them in buildings, right?
UIC guy sits there and shoots.
Science.
Sorry, say again?
I said I think the 4-up firepower too is good for Italians.
This is So these 81 mortar, they're perfect for killing stuff like Pack 38s, 25 pounders, and because you got the 48-inch range, you don't have to move them up so much. They do have a smoke bombardment, which I think is what makes them good. Now, when I used them, the re-rolling, I only used 2 tubes because I only had the 3 points kicking around. But man, the re-rolling to hits because of 2 tubes, that just killed me. I think I pinned the guy's Pack 38s just the one time. But yeah, if you want to run infantry, you get those Elefantino guns, you get mortars. I would maybe take the Bredas, but I certainly wouldn't take the assault mortars right now. But what I think is nice in version 4 is, let's say I only want the 81 millimeter mortars. Well, I don't have to take the whole rifle platoon. I'll take the weapons formation and then pull just the 81 millimeter mortars as a support option because it's one of the core choices. So I'll just do that. I don't have to take the full. I mean, I've got the models to take a big fat unit of infantry that just rushes forward. But I mean, you don't have to. Like, you do have those choices now in version 4.
Do you think?
So that's pretty much.
Do you think these infantry units make up for their small little tanks? I think so. I think,
I think
the Simaventis are
I
good.
think this is one of the pillars. We haven't talked about the third pillar, which is the big guns. That, I think, is the third. So combined arms, if you have some infantry, some tanks, and the big guns, I think you're doing okay. I mean, if you want to play defensive, have these big fat units of really good infantry. Like, look at their stats. Their stats are good. They're not gonna run away anytime soon. They hit on a 4+. So if they're dug in and concealed, it's gonna take a lot of energy to knock them out unless they've got artillery, and that's over a couple of turns. Like, if you want to play a defensive list, man, this is the way to go because we haven't even talked about. So we'll get to that later.
It's kind of funny because usually you think Flames of War, British Bulldog, British lists are really good in defense historically as well. Now, I can see where these guys are good. Hey, let's talk about some of that good support. Now, that Assault Engineer platoon looks hot. I don't know. What do you guys think of it? Well, let's talk about it.
Matt?
Well, the big thing is... I think for me, obviously, I think the flamethrowers, having flamethrowers now where they're no longer like a one shot and you lose them, I think it's a big deal. The one thing that I didn't mention earlier on was the improved rating for their assault rating. The deadly stat is only going to give them improved standard assault versus elite assault. So you're looking at like an assault 4+. The mortar team is considered an assault 4+. The flamethrower team is also an assault 4+, which is kind of, I don't know, not great. I don't think, for the amount of points, like I mentioned earlier, what you're spending to get.
This is an expensive.
I actually think,
they're hitting on a 3+.
Actually,
they swing on a 3+.
Just
but the mortars and the flamethrowers do not.
Yeah.
All right, because they're heavy weapons. My bad.
Yeah, I just thought in an assault, I thought the flamethrowers would get a better stat line. I was kind of looking forward to seeing engineers because I played German engineers quite a bit. I enjoyed them for flexibility. I am not too sure that I would play Italians, but if I was going to, I would certainly include maybe at least one smaller engineer platoon in there, even just for obstacles, because everybody gets the chance to use minefields now, where that wasn't a big thing in version 3. I'm actually more inclined to look at some of the armored versions or the armored units available out of the support options. The first one on the list would be the AB-41 armored car platoon. You can get 4 of them for 3 points. They have a 20mm gun. You're looking at a halted rate of fire of 2 and a moving rate of fire of 1, which is kind of a downer. I expected to see them maybe similar to what the 8-rads have, where they have a better rate of fire, especially on the move. You're going to need that rate of fire with the Italians, I think, against most opponents. Now, the next one on the list is the L640 light tank platoon, where it's pretty straightforward as far as points. You can get 5 of them for 5, 4 of them for 4, or 3 of them for 3 points.
And both of these platoons you just mentioned, they get scout and spearhead. And what I've been finding in version 4 is I take my spearhead and I hide these guys somewhere. Especially I play with German recce. Do you guys finding that too? Because these are not, both of the AB-41 and the L640 are stuff I'm just not going to keep in line of sight that much. What do you guys think?
See, I got to say this. For the L6, first of all, I have AB-41s. I think they look cool.
They do look cool.
They have a really lousy cross rating and only a tactical of 8, which sucks. But their road dash is really high. Now, what I really dig is the L641 has a front armor of 3. So it's the exact same armor as your M1441. And they're cheap as heck. And because in version 4, you can deploy them within command, and then when you spearhead, 2 can go in one direction and spearhead over here, and the other 3 can go in another direction. Now, sure, when they fire, those 2 that are away from the unit leader, oh no, they're out of command, they're hitting on +1. Yeah. But you've got one unit that's providing two potential spearheads. So if you've got a forest or a town or something like that, you can spearhead them both. And man, they are cheap for their little, yes, they've got the same turret as the AB-41, but front armor 3, and they got a higher tactical. Now, again, their dash isn't as good, but I'm thinking, I don't have any L641s, but if I didn't have any recon, I'd go with them. But that's just me.
Yeah.
And Dennis can attest to this too. Unlike Mitch, where Mitch is looking to hide those units. I actually, tend to sacrifice a lot of my spearhead or scout units pretty much right at the beginning of the game. I look for that. I look for the bubble and then just give.
Well, Matt,
my opponent
you've played me
something
long enough.
At.
I sacrifice all my units.
Yeah. But I agree with what Dennis said. As far as the points, I'm not too sure you would consider the armored cars because you get that front armor 3 with the tanks, and you're only spending a couple extra points to get 5 of them versus the 4 armored cars you're going to get.
And
just the regular armor.
And they have that focused turret issue. It's like the one-man turret roll.
Yeah.
That just means they're bad on tactics.
Yeah. Yes.
But if you get improved, then that's on a 4+. So you never know, right? You always got to remember
You roll up a
Remember
lead.
those 8 million bayonet dice, because every now and again you get a hero.
Yeah, I just really wanted to see something. I really want to see something better out of the stats. So I really expected a cross on a 3-up versus a 4.
Yeah, that'd have been good.
The light tank platoon.
Yeah, they're like
Really,
half-track tracks, just real narrow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the next thing we're going to talk about, I'm going to bring up some controversy here. First of all, I hated playing against these guys because they killed a lot of things. But I don't remember, and since you guys are seasoned Italian players, let's talk about the 90mm Lancia anti-tank battery. Hated them. But I don't remember their anti-tank being 14.
It wasn't.
So, controversy time. Did somebody say, wait, hold on. The Germans got these Tigers. We have to make sure the Italians have something to kill it. Just throwing it out there.
Well, riddle me this. The German 88 has AT-14 right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think we can really talk about the 90mm Lancia without talking about also the fact that the Italians bought 88s, and you can run Italian crude 88s and 90mm Lancia trucks, and the stats for the guns are identical.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think maybe the Lancia 90mm, they just said, we're going to make the gun identical, so it's now AT-14. To come back to Mitch's point about why is it +1 AT than it used to be.
Yeah,
sure. And you look at that too. You look at the fact that the Lancias, you get the mobility, and then the 88s don't. So you can run, you can run one as a mobile unit, and just that would make, it's going to make
they can't move and shoot though.
Pretty bad. No, but at least you can move them around the table. Now with a range of 40 inches, you're probably not going to need to do it that often. But I don't know what the stat line was on the Lancias in V3 with the 90mm. I don't know if it was obvious it wasn't 14. I'm not even sure if it was.
No, it was 13.
Yeah, it was less.
So it's only a 1-up boost instead of a 2-up boost. Okay.
I mean, 4 of them. I mean, they're 6 points each.
Yeah, but for anything but Tigers, it's overkill.
Yeah. What's the range? It's so okay.
40.
So then let's go to the other gun we mentioned, the 88. All right. Sure. I would like to think. I don't know if you guys could see here, but I got a lot of books in my house. I don't remember reading about Italian crude 88s.
I didn't look into it.
If somebody out there, please email me. But we have Italian crude 88s.
But here's the thing: the 90mm gun, I think, was also on a ground mount. So for me, I've got on my Lancia trucks, I've got the guns magnetized. I'm going to make a ground mount so I can run either or, because there are advantages to either one. Like, the truck one, it's an unarmored tank team, so it can be pinned. You can reroll your mighty 4+ save if you get hit by brutal, but you do get a gun shield, so that's good. Whereas the 88, it can dig in and be concealed, in the open. So there's advantage there. But as a gun team, it can't be given movement orders that aren't dig in or cross here. So I don't know.
You get some.
It's tight.
You get good options with heavy AT here.
Yeah, and one thing about the way they go into the force options, you get 2 of these units. Either you can take 1 of each, or 2 of the Lancias, or 2 of the 88s. So you can mix and match as you want.
You can take 8 guns. So all those guys that had Kampfgrups, what is it, Svoboda from late war, swap out the crews, baby. You can have 8 88s.
Yeah, especially when the Russians come in, I think you're going to see a few more anti-tank guns going to Italian lists when the Russians hit the table.
Yeah.
Even just Shermans and Churchills when the Armored Fist comes out.
Yeah.
You'll need higher AT.
Yep.
Yeah, these are.
Because right now the M14, I mean, you can get into the side, but it's just not going to cut it against the stuff that's coming. It's just not going to.
Now, just as a side note, I'm looking online right now, and the only information that I can find as far as other armed forces using the 88 in World War II, Italy's actually not on the list. What I find interesting is that good old Wikipedia also has surviving examples of 88s, and Italy's not on that list either. So that's going to take some more research. I'd be interested to see
we'll
how many they bought, or how many were given to them. Maybe maybe Mussolini sent Hitler a case of wine and got a got a few 88s.
A case of wine you could never drink. You know, if I'm going to play Italians, I'm taking the 88s. But I think you get great anti-tank options at 40 inches, which is good. I mean, I think most of these games are being played on desert boards, so you need something like this. And you can take either or. I think that's neat.
Well, you're going to need these as the Italians, even now for the Shermans and the Lees and the Grants.
Oh, yeah.
Because their AT6 isn't going to. Some Aventes, they're not bad. They can deal with some of those, but they're going to need these to reinforce those light tanks and light anti-tank guns.
And my opponent in the second game I played, his first target was my Lancias, and you know what? He killed one, and because it's a vehicle unit of 2. I mean, yes, I only took 2. I only have 2, but man, oh man, I was testing right away. It was just brutal.
Yeah.
Lost him straight away, and then after that, his grants were like, "Well, all I got to do is not get within 16 inches of your 100mm guns for direct fire." And he just sat there and blasted the hell out of him.
Stay outside.
But the nice thing is these artillery pieces are all fearless. They're all 3+ morale. That does help with that a bit.
I still rolled a 1.
Yeah, well, that's how it works, right?
One's bad on any day. Rolling with the guns, moving along. Going from 88s. If we're done with the 88 chatter, we're bumping it up a bit. We're going to the 100mm howitzer battery, which perusing this book over the last couple of days, this is actually one of my favorite units in the book. I think 4 howitzers for 12 points is good. The features of the howitzer listed, so it's longer range artillery. You can use it as emergency anti-tank. The special rules for them, they've got brutal, so that's at point blank range. The big 100mm shell is brutal, forcing infantry and guns to reroll their saves. It's a slow firing weapon though, so if the unit is pinned, it's gonna gain a +1 penalty to hit, and then of course it's got smoke as well. Obviously with smoke, it's a one-use thing depending on how many batteries you're running. Stat lines, you're looking at a 72-inch range for artillery bombardment with an AT3 with a 3-up firepower. What do you guys think about that? 3 and 3.
It's good.
It's
Same
better
as the
than
10.5 for the Germans.
Yeah, and it's better than the 25-pounder. Has more shots and better range, and is more expensive for direct fire, but has a worse firepower for artillery. One thing to note, they are ranging in on a 4+, unless you roll that Italian symbol on the 8 million bayonets dice.
Yeah.
Then they're ranging in on a 3+.
These would be good to kill Italian tanks.
They're good.
These are great, yeah. Well, in direct fire, but they only have a 16-inch range, which
that's the killer. But the 16-inch range, you're gonna have to bring your opponent in closer. The 18-9 with a 2-up firepower is awesome. So it's really going to come down to if you can get them in that bubble into an area where you can fire now against enemy teams coming at you. And
but you need something to kill 25.
Get some of that armored stuff off your back in the assault again, especially with the Russians coming up.
Yeah, it's true. So the observation post, once again, it's the 1 point, and it's the AB-41. Let's talk about the last.
Better than the 2-point Honey Stewart, that's for sure.
And then you've got the Rock Me Amadeus Falco assault section.
Oh, I love that. Hey, Vienna's calling, Matt. That was a good one.
Yeah, exactly. Saving that gem for a while. The Falco is great because for 2 aircraft for 5 points, still it's a hit on a 5-up with a 3-up save. You're looking at a 100-kilogram bomb, 6-inch range, as per aircraft rules. AT3 with a 3-up firepower, which is half decent because not a lot of tanks have that top 2 anymore, and I think that 3 and 3 gives you maybe a 40% chance of maybe popping a tank if he happens to.
I think it's the
happen to hit.
This is to kill guns. Pesky 17-pounders or 88s or stuff like that. Well, 88s, they'll be able to shoot at them, but I mean, this thing has a better aircraft save than my Hind D's and Team Yankees. And they're made out of cloth and wood.
Maybe the Russian Hind was definitely a test then for the Falco, perhaps for this book.
Yeah, I mean, the Italians are the bravest pilots in World War II. You have to be to fly those things.
Oh yeah.
For sure. But it's a great looking model, though.
It is.
I don't own one. Dennis has
I've got one.
has one for sure.
I've got one, and I picked up an SM202 at one of the fall-ins for like $5. So it's yet again another little Italian fighter that was kind of outclassed. So they just strapped bombs on it in the desert and used them as ground attack. So I'll have one of each. I mean, I love the biplane of justice, or AKA 5 o'clock Charlie, as one of our guys used to always call him.
Biplane of justice.
Yeah, the thing is that we didn't mention is the guns are only anti-tank 4. I mean, yes, they're not Hurricanes, but I mean, these guys are only 5 points, and these guys can reach out and hit stuff in the enemy backfield.
And
sure, yeah, and with the rate of fire too, with the AT4, I mean, like you said, kill guns, strafe infantry in the open, other odds and ends. They're definitely going to be on most people's list. I think you're going to have instances where your list is going to have 5 points left over, 3 to 5 points, and I would certainly stick a Falco in there for sure. 2 aircraft for 5 is a good deal.
I know when I was debating my list, remember we went back to the 5 points of the 3 mortars. It was like I could get 3 mortar tubes for 5 points, or I can get 2 Falcos for 5 points. And I was really hemming and hawing, but I went. I went with the mortars, primarily because I don't have the other plane painted. But we'll have to test it.
I think you'll see these on tables.
Yeah, 5 points. They're pretty much automatic. And you don't think of them in great terms for anti-tank, but it does one thing: it makes them space those tanks out, which increases your chance for causing a bad spirits check, because if they cluster them up, this thing will get 1 or 2 of them. It's just enough to make them risk the loss of command and control by spreading out.
Yeah, I think that's gonna play into it too, Tom. Is the fact that you can't spread out as much as you used to, obviously without with a penalty. So you're just going to have to make a decision based on, I think, who your opponent is, what.
I just thought of something. Remember in version 3, planes used to you'd place your plane, right? You'd place your plane down, and then you would do all your shooting, and then the planes would hit last.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
That's right. So
you can have to go anytime you want.
If you do a lucky bombardment on a section of 3 German tanks, and you happen to bail one, you can do that first, and then your 88 or your 90 millimeters, like, well, now all I got to do is hit one of them, and now he's testing potential.
Sure. Yeah.
So there is a little bit more tactical, involvement in maybe doing the bomb run early on your Falco.
Well, let's before we get to our break, let's talk about the last unit, and it's the AAA. I don't see anything too remarkable about it. I wish it had
average cost, average stats. It's we're talking about the Auto Cannone 20 millimeter anti-aircraft platoon. It's an unarmored tank unit. It's hit on a 4-up, so again, it's careful. Its save is a 5-up. You're looking at a tactical move of 8, a terrain dash of 10, cross country is a 12, and then a road dash of 24, which isn't too bad for a truck with an aircraft gun in the back. You can buy 4 of them for 6 points, or 2 of them for 3. I think again, it comes down to what I was talking about before. If you have 3 or 5 points left, 5, you probably take the aircraft. 3 points left, you definitely want to include this unit, because it's got pretty decent stats. It's got a halted rate of fire of 3, a moving rate of fire of 2, which is great. AT5 with a 5-up firepower, which isn't too good, but at least
dedicated AA, so it gets
you can get some side shots. What's funny about the 20 millimeter on this is the moving rate of fire is 2 versus the light tank and the armored car that has the same caliber weapon.
Yeah.
You're looking at a moving rate of fire of 1.
I'm going to
the AA guys are a little bit faster in loading.
I'm going to throw a bigger poop grenade on this one before we head into break for us to think about. So this has a range of 20 millimeter gun. So let's say there's a HMG unit that's 22 inches away. That's getting 6 shots at me. It's going to take a whole platoon of these things out. An HMG. where
because it's unarmored. It's 5+6.
but here you have a 20mm gun that can't meet the range of an HMG.
Not only that, I think at 6 points for 4, it's way overcosted.
It's way overcosted.
What does the Italian army have lots of? Stuff, medium range anti-tank fiber guns. It has 1 million of these shots. You know what I mean? I think it's unfortunate because I used to have in version 3, 2 of them were 65 points. Oh yeah, another thing, they can't dismount. The old version 3 ones, you could dismount them. Yeah, you could dismount them and they could dig in and all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
And these guys can't do it.
I'm hoping the range is wrong.
Me too.
Because you know, who doesn't like taking your AA and just destroying infantry out in the open? Now, infantry out in the open, especially with HMGs, are going to just take these things out.
But as 20mm guns have always been in the 16-inch. That's really not very different than what we have had.
In lighter caliber, because it's the same stats for the armored car platoon and the light tank platoon. You're looking at 20 inches as well.
Same gun.
You're gonna have to close distance, right? So
yeah. Maybe one other thing. I know we're coming up on the break, and we don't need to go through them, but just the mere fact that you can take German support units as part of your formation, not as allies. That's not as that's kind of unique.
You don't have, and that I was going to mention, you don't have to buy the Africa Corps book to take the German formations because they're all here. You don't get any of the German support options, but you get their combat platoons, the Panzer IIIs, the Panzer. Do you get Panzer IVs?
Panzer IVs
and the infantry, which is good.
Pack 30.
Yeah.
Pack right.
So I'm liking this book. We are going to talk when we come back from break. We're going to talk about we've actually played with these guys, and we're going to take a quick break. Just because really we probably have to go to the bathroom. But we'll be right back with more Avanti on No Dice, No Glory. Welcome back to No Dice, No Glory's spoiler of Avanti. Welcome back, gentlemen. Hey, long time no speak. We're going to do something that's a little different than stuff we used to do in the past. We actually have played these games a few times, and we're going to talk about what we thought putting these things on the table. So I think, Tom, you first up with this?
Okay. Yeah, so roughly a week ago, Battle Buddy Ed, my local primary opponent, he and I got together. Now, he's a big Italian fan. He's got a big collection, so he's been very, very into getting ready for this and going through the list. So we put together a force. We picked the 71-point level, which is the current U.S. Nationals level, and we ended up with Dust Up as a mission. And basically, he ran a two-formation force. He had a M1441 company, and then he had one of the 5th Bersaglieri infantry formations, and he had one of the weapons type platoons from the 8th attached in there as well. So pretty good force with his a section of artillery and none of the heavy anti-tank stuff. No Lancias, no 88s. He didn't need it because he knew what he was going to face. So if you didn't know, lately I've been playing a lot of the Crusaders and trying to use them and break them and so on. So I took a formation that was almost exclusively Crusader tanks, which I've been doing very well in tournaments and so on, or at least fairly well. So that was kind of the premise, just to see how the current bugbear, if you will. A lot of people all up in arms about the British tank formations and their hordes of light tanks, and especially with a scout card. So I took those with a scout card, and pretty much the game was rough. We ended up with Dust Up, and as Dennis was talking earlier about the ability for those 47mm guns to move, those things tore me up. And one thing I've consistently had problems with my British Crusader force is veteran anti-tank guns. And that's essentially what these things are, because they're being hit on 4s. So he basically moved those guys up towards the middle of the board, and where there was a small town complex, got them in the buildings, and that pretty much shut me down. We ended up playing to a draw after about 7 or 8 turns. We kept the time limit to 2.5 hours like a tournament would be. And there just wasn't enough ability for me because of their high training. Like Americans, I can shoot through. I can go through American infantry because they're hit relatively easily. But these guys are 4+, and with those guns giving basically the 47mm guns being anti-tank teams, extremely rough game for me. So definitely, I kind of see these guys as the antidote to the swarms. You know, you're not going to push over the Italians with your honey tanks or your Crusader tanks. So it was quite an eye-opening experience for me.
You know, I really didn't think about with the amount of 47s, and when Dennis was talking about it before, like with all those anti-tank guns, this may be the antidote to the swarm. I really wasn't thinking that way.
And the tanks aren't bad either against the British tanks, because that remount with that determined and protected ammo, getting back up on a 2+, and half the time you manage to hit a Italian tank, it's just going to be bailed because your firepower with the British tanks, whether it's the 2-pounder or the 6-pounder, is only a 4+. So 50-50 chance that it's bailed, and that bailed is basically meaningless now because those guys just remount and shoot back at full rate of fire. So it was kind of an eye opener for me. I really am impressed with and they may have troubles. I think we'll come back and talk about how they do overall. The Italians may have troubles with, like a Sherman formation or even a formation of all Lees or all Grants. But against the Hordes, they've got the tools to do the job.
Not bad.
I think against the Crusaders especially, the 47mm shines because of another factor, and that is the +1 to hit because of no HE.
Yes.
Murder.
Right. Yeah, you can't do anything back to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just can't hit them.
So
yeah, that whole game, I destroyed one solo Thurn and one 47mm gun that was part of a weapons platoon, and killed a few tanks, but basically could not push and destroy things fast enough to move into. And I kind of ended up close to an objective. Another few turns, I might have been able to pull it off, but it definitely was a extremely hard fought battle.
So, from the Great White North, what was your experience in playing with the Italians from Avanti?
Well, I played 2 games, one of which there's going to be a battle report on, so I'll focus on the second one.
And that battle report will be featured where?
On No Dice, No Glory.
Okay, thank
you. So the second game I played was against British. It's my own British army. But a friend of mine, Chris, was running them. He definitely wanted to take a combined arms approach. So I made him a list with a Crusader formation, with one of the Crusader units was upgraded to some Grants. He took an infantry formation with 2 sets of universal carriers, which I now have way more respect for, as we'll get to shortly. He had some 6-pounders, which those won him the game on turn 1. He also took some 25-pounders, so he definitely wanted to take a combined arms approach. He did, and again, we were playing the 71-point Battlefront tournament level, just because we've got Canadian Nationals coming up in September, and it's going to be mid-war, so we may as well start practicing for that now. We ended up playing a counter, and my list, I was taking I didn't take anything that was Bersaglieri. So I had the 400mm howitzers. I had 2 tank did I take 2 tank formations? Yeah, I took 2 tank formations. One was the Commando Kari as the HQ, 4 Semaventes, 5 M1441s. My second formation was M1441 HQ and 2 units of 5 M1441s. I also took my Lancias, and that was I didn't even have any scouts. And we ended up playing a counter, and I'll tell you what, he moved his. And the thing is, this is the second game I played, so I pulled on him the old 47mm Elefantino gun follow me into this woods on top of a hill, and it stymied him so badly that he ended up doing to me with his 6-pounders what I did to him. So he used his universal carriers to spearhead these 6-pounders up on this hill after I deployed my tanks. I don't have that many units because they're kind of bulked out units. He ended up on one turn. He split the fire of his 6-pounders. So one 6-pounder with 2 shots killed one of my Lancias, and that caused the unit to run the next turn. And his other 3, needing 5s to hit on my M1441s, hit 5 times.
You gotta hate that.
No, he bailed out 3 and killed 2, and I rolled 2 ones for the remounts. It was unreal. So right from the get-go, so he gives me a scotch at this point going, and we had another guy, Andrew B. From Dice Devils, looking on, giving us pointers on, looking up rules and stuff like that. And it was just one of those games where it just started off on the bad foot. But in terms of what ended up happening was I ended up deciding, okay, I want to get rid of these 6-pounders. And I figured what better way than to use the good mobility of the M1441s. So I moved them up, was able to assault into the side of the 6-pounders, so behind their gun shields, rolled 5 out of 6 failed cross checks, and ended up losing 1 platoon that way. So the game was basically coming down. It was going really badly for me, but the things to be learned about this was I had, because of the 40% points off the table, and it was a counter, I ended up putting my Semavente and M1441 formation reserves. And I'll tell you what, he was bum rushing a unit of British up to try and capture my objective. I had the Lancias sitting on the objective, but once those were dead, there was nothing within 30 inches of them. So he was bum rushing his infantry up, and lo and behold, I get my M1441s, and it's in counter, so I get the corner deployment, scattered delayed reserves. I get my corner deployment. I drove up, and I just unleashed 30 MG shots. Again, M1441s have 6 MG shots on the move. I annihilated the unit. It was just so satisfying. It was just blank. On the other side, I had my Semaventes come out and was starting to tear up his grants. So his grants had come in, and like I discussed earlier with the 100-millimeter guns, it's all great and all to have a AT9 2+ firepower and direct fire, but it's only range 16, and they can't tactical move. So he stayed at 16.1 and was just blasting stuff. But man, those Semaventes coming from behind, anti-tank 8. Yes, he's got side armor 4, but I was able to start lighting him up. I still end up losing because of the aforementioned hated the Recce universal carriers were able to make it past my M1441s, and I couldn't make a blitz to contest. But
did they all have boys' rifles too?
No, you know what? He didn't. I have found those useless.
Yeah, I agree.
People have had this, but I don't have any boys anti-tank rifles on my universals. I just go straight MGs.
Yep.
So you guys have tested it. And you guys have played Italians before. So let's just go with some basic questions here. Italians version 4, are they more fun than version 3?
For me, they are. I'm lucky in that I didn't have any of the wacky units that are not in this book, like the Fucilieri, the Motociclisti, the Paracabisti. I didn't have any of those. I think at one time I did have the Italian motorbikes, but I was like, I don't feel like assembling these things.
Right.
So,
but one thing we don't know what's coming with command cards, and I don't know where I've heard it, but hopefully it's a good rumor. But I understand that we're going to get the Fucilieri as a command card downgrade from the probably the 5th Bersaglieri.
Oh, that'd be wicked. Because then they can basically simulate Russians at that point with swaths of just.
I tell you what's missing that I liked the few times I played is the Unknown Hero, which was
yeah.
I hope that's in a card, Battlefront, if you're listening.
Yeah, but One thing as we talk about what's gone, let's also note that we have things we've never seen before for the Italians. And probably it's the first thing in version 4, at least version 4 of Mid-War, we see where we never had this before, one of which is having a Semovente formation, right? That's new. Never had that. Also having the Semovente with its proper ability to bombard. That's new. So
6-gun batteries, jeez.
Yeah, with 6-gun batteries now. Before they were maxed out at 4. So there's some interesting new additions, and I'm kind of encouraged that because we never really saw anything new in the previous books.
Yeah.
Right. They were truncated lists. They were cut down. Some items left off. There wasn't anything we had never seen before. Just different interpretations of it. But now we actually have some new stuff.
Yeah.
That weapons formation, man.
It's good.
Yeah, that's new.
If you run a whole bunch of tanks like I normally do for Italians, because they're just fun, just having, a lot of times you need something to sit back and defend your objectives. As the game that I just finished losing to illustrates perfectly. You know what I mean? Like, Universal Carriers drove up and there's literally nothing there. I failed my blitz with my M14s. But that weapons formation, you take, even if it's just one weapons platoon with a solo thurn that can just dig in. I mean, they're hit on a 4+, so if you dig in, you're gone around, being hit on a 6+.
Yeah, 7 with no HE.
and usually the things that are hitting you at your objective, I mean, unless things are going really pear-shaped, isn't like big, heavy tanks. It's usually light stuff like Universal Carriers. Well, that Solothurn, that's gonna kill one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The 47mm is gonna kill one. So the ability to take the small little weapons formation, instead of, back in the day it was, I want to take this army and then I only have one tank unit as support. Well, now you take this tiny little formation as support. You can take the 81mm just out of the rifle company just as support, and then you can run the rest of it as tanks if you like. I really like that. There's a lot more versatility now than there used to be.
Yeah, I would say since the first 2 books, I played First to Fight, or I played against First to Fight the other day. I'd say in First to Fight and now in Avanti, I think they worked out the bugs with how these lists look, and it's great. You can pretty much come as you are. You could really take what you want. So, are these guys better than in version 3?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
To me, they are.
Yeah. They're veterans for being shot at. I mean, that's
Which is not unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's super super bonus for them.
From playing against them, I think there's a major buff here. It's probably well deserved. I think it makes the Italians not one of those fringe niche boutique armies, as I like to call them. I think this puts the Italians in the mainstream of force selection. I mean, you guys preaching to the choir. You've been playing Italians for a long time, but are we going to see more Italian players at the table now?
I hope so.
You certainly you'll have a lot of returning Italian players, and you certainly see some new ones. And since you're the meta guy, this affects the meta. If the light tank swarms were edging out on the meta, well, guess what? They've just been met their kryptonite.
This is the paper to the rock.
Yes.
Yeah. It's I just think that this really is a big game changer. And the Italians were always considered, they're not in the top 4. No. If you look at the late war that just got released, it's British, Germans, Americans, Russians. I think this was a great idea to put out. In my opinion, the Avanti book 3rd. It kind of rounds out the forces.
Yeah, technically
fourth. I'm sorry, 4th. I think it rounds out with the Allies. I think as a guy that will play Germans, this gives me Italians to put on the table to support my Germans.
Yeah, you better take a Semovente battery.
Yeah, you have to, because at 5 of them it's cheaper than the Panzer IV that I would take as a battery.
You get 6 of them for the same price, so you're re-rolling your if you fail to hit on bombardments, you get to re-roll. That'd be fantastic.
And I think a German formation HQ can spot for them, because it does say spotting team any formation HQ. So you can have a German infantry guy calling in shots for the Semoventes, which I think is amazing.
Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah, I just think this is a big buff. I think it's fun, and I'll tell you what. Here you guys are the converted, and myself, where I was kind of holding out, like, well, which mid-war army am I going to play? or am I going to build a new mid-war army in version 4? And I have to say, from reading this, and especially from listening to you guys, I think a really nice, well-balanced Italian force, I think is going to be fun. Who knows if I win, because I'm not a good player and I roll like crap, but I think these guys are going to be fun. And I think people should give these dudes a look. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think I'm going to be the converted. I think I've played against a lot of Italian lists. I don't own any Italians, but certainly after spending a few days looking at the book and, the better part of an hour and a bit discussing the lists and the flexibility and some of the cool options and the models look good and everything else, I think this might be enough just to get me into another Axis, faction, if you will.
And it's nice because it's another Axis faction that isn't Germans.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I really think this was a good step. I think I'd give this 5 out of 5 meatballs or pasta drops, but I think this is a good, exciting book, and I don't play Americans because I am one. And I wasn't really happy with Desert Rats. I normally play Brits. I would play Germans, and I'm like, I have so many hard choices to make. I can't take that balanced force. But I think Avanti scratches the itch I had on Saturday, and I'm going to collect some of this stuff.
Especially since you were stationed in Italy in the past.
I was.
You get a little personal tie in there.
Che così fa, gentlemen. I mean, no, it's. I really think that this is a good force. Italians were tricky to play in the past, from what I've heard, and I think now not so much.
Yeah, pretty solid.
Well,
force.
I'll tell you what. I think our folks out there that have been listening, I don't know, and I'm not trying to pump our own podcast while I'm on it, but I was iffy about collecting another army, but I think Matt and I are going to be collecting Italians. Matt, what do you say to that?
I'm in.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we let's get some closing comments from you guys. First and foremost, when this comes out, please check our website, NoDiceNoGlory.com. We're going to put up pictures. We're going to put up, not only will you hear us talk about Avanti, you will read about us playing Avanti. I'm excited. I wish the models were out because I'm playing in the mid-war tournament in 2 weeks. Not going to happen. But yeah, I'd like to turn it to you guys for your final thoughts, and let's turn it over to Iron Tom before we go up north.
Okay. Well, I think it's a great ad. I think it's going to add a lot more depth to mid-war. And I know there's existing Italian players. I can't see any reason why they'd be happy or not happy with this. Yes, there may be some ins and outs that weren't there before, but they have some exciting new options and exciting new things to employ. So I think it's a good addition, and it's going to help draw up interest in mid-war version 4.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm excited about this. So let's go up north. Hey, let me just ask, because it's been really cold here in the D.C. area. It was like 12 the other day when I got up to go to the gym. What's temperature up there?
It's fine now, but it was at the minus 40 level with the wind at some point.
Is
40, minus 42 Celsius.
Yeah. Which is the same as, minus 44 is the same for both. So just think of it that way.
It's cold.
Nice.
Yeah, I spent time in North Dakota, man. It's cold up there too. And I want to know, just to say, I did watch the Grey Cup this year. And
why?
Because there was nothing else on TV.
I prefer the NFL. I prefer the NFL even as a Canadian.
I wanted to be that one American to watch it. So I'll turn it up to you, Matt. What do you think of this?
So I think I'm on board. I think I wasn't at first, obviously. I think, well, maybe not obvious to most, unless you talk to me about Italians. Like I said, played a lot of games against them. Never really saw anything that interested me as far as what was being thrown at me across the table. They had some quirky rules and stuff. Dennis talked about setting everything up and rolling for to improve their ratings, which is fantastic. I think it's a great addition. It's gonna cut down on counters on the table. It's gonna be easier to track
Yeah.
I think with the introduction of the flamethrowers and engineers are going to be, albeit for me they're expensive. I still think it's going to be a good addition to any list or any Italian list, or in your case, Mitch, if you plan on running Germans or with a mix of Italians thrown in there. I think this book is going to have something for everyone, and I kind of wish this had been released before the U.S. book. I'm on the opposite side of the page where I think this book probably would have had me a little more excited about mid-war because, like Tom mentioned and Mitch mentioned, as far as options for British players, you don't really have a lot. Having played,
there's Armored Fist.
So there is some additions with the cards and stuff that come out. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it'll be nice that the new kits are coming out. So if you want to get into this stuff, you'll be able to right away, and it's going to be fairly easy to paint and get on the table quickly. Certainly.
Yeah, easy to paint is very key.
I'm just going with my camo scheme.
Matt Varnish. So wait, Iron Fist is the next book with the British in it, right?
I believe so. It's going to have Sherman's, Churchill's, and I think Valentine's.
You are correct. Right. I think April is what they're talking.
Oh, I hope so. I thought Armor's Fist was a X-rated movie. I'm sorry. Anyway, Matt Varnish.
Well, I've got the Italian Army, and this book is great in that a lot of the randomness has been taken out. There's a lot more options, as we've already discussed. But what I think it really helps not just Italian players, it helps the game in general in that now, even if you're playing a fun game or a club game or even at a tournament, now you got to think, okay, that's great. How do I defeat Africa Corps? Okay, but now how am I going to defeat all these light guns? How am I going to defeat all these small little tanks? It really throws a wrench in list building for all the other lists, the other nations that are out there. And let's say you don't want to jump in all the way and say, I'm going to collect a whole Italian army. But boy, if you've got 4 88s, you can use them as one unit, as an allied, as a German player. If you've got your big Panzer IIIs and, Panzer IIs are good, but man, a whole whack ton of, M1441s, they're 36 points for a whole formation, and you can take for 36 points. That's slightly more than one Tiger. Would you rather take one Tiger that gets 2 shots a game, or I don't know, about 125 MG shots?
One Tiger.
So there's a lot
because I have them.
Well, yeah, because I can't do anything to the Tiger with all that stuff except for form a circle of Rex locking you down. But just as an overall thing, as an Italian player, you're going to be happy, but it helps the game in general because it just throws a wrench into the meta, as much as I hate to use that term.
Yeah, you're right.
And I hate that word too. Well, I think, and you guys at home cannot see us, but right now I am looking at my podcasting brethren here, and everybody has a big smile on their face with 2 thumbs up. So I think Avanti is a big hit. Please stay tuned to more. Look, Matt just put a thumb up. It was like a cartoon thumb. Hey, stay tuned for more coverage on Avanti from NoDiceNoGlory.com. Feel free to write us. All of our emails are on that webpage. And, hey, we'd like to thank you for listening. And I know from the home station below a mountain in West Virginia, I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to have my my podcasting partners sign off as well.
Take care.
Adios.
See you soon.
See you at the next one.
Thanks so much for joining the show tonight. Remember to follow us on Twitter at NoDiceNoGlory, and keep the conversation going on NoDiceNoGlory.com, now featuring our own message boards. Have a great night, everybody.